Hello, this is Rick Saltarelli with Salty Breeze Cruise Planners with this week's segment of Beyond Your Front Door. And today I have a very special guest from Alaska. Please welcome Marnie Sheldon. How are you today, Marnie?
I am excellent. Hi, Rick. Thanks for having me on.
I'm
It's
so excited.
the dawn of a new day here in Alaska.
It is. It looks like the sun is shining.
Actually,
And I am so,
this is what it looks like currently at Sheldon Chalet. This is not a live picture, but of a similar day in March with the same conditions we have today.
and that picture really says it all. I am so excited to have you here because I think this is the most unique travel product that I have ever seen. It's such a unique vacation experience. So without me trying to get in over my head, why don't you share with us the history of Sheldon Chalet?
Okay, the history is rich and robust, so I'll give you a speedy version of it. That rock outcropping that the chalet is sitting on in the picture there is called a nunatak, which literally means rock outcropping in a glacier. As we know with science, glaciers move down valley and rip everything out with them. This is titanium and iron, therefore it stays in the millennia that the glacier has been there. In the 1950s, my father-in-law, Don Sheldon, he's a very famous pilot here in Alaska and has been pioneering flying all across the Alaska range. He claimed this piece of property in the 50s while he was mapping the Alaska range with a gentleman named Bradford Washburn. Alaska range had never been mapped before, so all maps that we have in existence today are traced back to their original efforts. In that effort, he decided, I want this piece of rock. I'm going to homestead it. So he puts in a homestead claim for it. Alaska is not a state yet, and Denali National Park is not as big as it is today. So he surveys 4.99999 acres to get right under 5 acres. And that's important because under 5 acres means it has to be used commercially. That was a subsection of the Homestead Act. So he decides the world needs to see this gorgeous property and this place in Denali. So then in 1966, he builds the historic Sheldon Mountain House. Well, it wasn't historic then, we now call it. It's a 200 square foot rustic hut, no running water, wood burning stove, but he rented that out to mountaineers, hardy adventurers through the years. And that was a huge hit in a very small community. Then my mother-in-law becomes part of the picture, Roberta. He marries her, and the two of them run the mountain house. They run Talkeetna Air Service, his large air taxi. He's doing flight tours all around Denali with climbers and rescues and tourists. And then unfortunately, he passes away of cancer in 1975, very unfortunate and sad. And Roberta, my mother-in-law, completely goes a different direction, shuts down the air taxi service, tries to figure out, how do I raise 3 small kids in this little town of Talkeetna? She continues to rent out the mountain house to the same adventure types that they did back in the beginning. And so the kids knew that this was what the family did and what they grew up knowing. But what they didn't grow up knowing is that Don and Roberta had plans for a bigger second structure to further build out the property. So fast forward to 2014, Roberta, we now lose her. And we start uncovering all the family history in the warehouse down the street, architectural drawings, audio recordings of Don talking about his plans to build out the property. Those drawings, the architectural drawings, point directly to what we call Sheldon Chalet today. They were post-dated Mountain House era. They were dated 1968. And they are for a bigger structure than the mountain house. And so we did this in their legacy. We saw all of this clues and trails left behind by the generation before and decided we have to do it in their honor. I mean, this is epic. So we embarked on the journey to build the Sheldon Chalet starting in 2015, opened February of 2018, and here we are today. That's the very short condensed history.
Oh, and so what a rich history and honoring the legacy of your in-laws. That is amazing. And just getting to, so the chalet itself is a wonderful experience. We're going to talk about that. But just getting to the chalet is an experience unlike any other. Tell us how guests get to the chalet.
Okay. So it is so fun. Guests arrived at the chalet in a helicopter, and an A-Star helicopter, a big, robust, can do anything kind of bird. We depart from Anchorage or from Talkeetna, guest preference, if they're building out a larger itinerary. The cool thing about that is it's exclusive to us. So mind you, we are in Denali National Park. Oh, part of the history segment is the park surrounded us in 1980. And so therefore, the minute you step off our 5 acres, you're in Denali National Park. Well, Denali National Park does not let you fly a helicopter to tourists in like you could any other national park. So we say, all right, well, you're coming to our private property, and you get this gorgeous flight seat in the A-Star on the way through. And our guests, oh my gosh, it's emotional landing at the chalet. We've had it described as spiritual intoxication. We've had it, I'm stunned, I'm gobsmacked. I can't even, it takes a while to gather senses. I had one woman in her 80s. I mentioned, like, you're going to feel like a Bond girl when you land. She goes, honey, I feel like that every day. I mean, it is unreal coming through the peaks because you don't notice it. Well, the way we arrive to the property, the pilot says, can you see the chalet? And everybody can't, because it is a literal speck, even as you're flying through, and then you come sweeping down and around. But seeing Denali from that helicopter really changes the viewpoint. It takes it up 1,000 notches.
I'm sure. And so just what we described so far, I'd like to say that this is a once in a lifetime, unparalleled journey. And I think that is an understatement. So why don't we share with people what life is like up there, because this isn't the little mountain house anymore. This is a 5-star chalet.
Very much so. And just to be cheeky, I like to spin the once in a lifetime. I'm like, no, once a season, because every season is different. In fact, the guests that are inbound later today are a repeat client. They visited in the fall in 2019, and they're back with their family to do spring. So to answer that question, it's each season is different at Sheldon Chalet. So I will give you kind of a day in the life of what a guest could do, and that will slightly shift based on the season. So I've got this beautiful March picture in the background. We'll kind of do March, and then I'll maybe do a little summer. So you arrive in your helicopter to Sheldon Chalet, and you're greeted by your staff. So each guest experience has a chef, a concierge, and guides. The adventure guides take you out onto the glacier. The Don Sheldon Amphitheater, named after my father-in-law, is 35 square miles. There is a lot of exploration to be done. So once you gather your senses and you're kind of like, where am I? You come inside, and there's typically a gorgeous seafood presentation, reception, champagne, king crab, oysters, ceviche made with our fresh halibut. And you just settle in. Then we take guests through an orientation of what it's like to be on this property, little things to be considered of. And the one biggest thing is, if you step outside the building, please let somebody know, just so we know where you're going and we know that you're always safe. We got a gorgeous deck out front that we pull out chairs that also doubles as the helipad, so people can enjoy that. So the afternoon is really just kind of spent settling in and then talking to guides. And the guides are going to present to you what your adventure and exploration options are. It changes by the season, and it changes by the day based on weather, glacier conditions, and other considerations. If you'd rather have a relaxing trip or a go-get trip, and just wear you out. So that is part of the discussion. And then usually we roll into an afternoon, even further, like cocktail hour on the deck, and then a gorgeous, gorgeous dinner with our chef. And everything is fresh. Everything is to our guest specification. We're able to dial it in, of course, for the vegetarian, the vegan, the allergy sensitive. And even within a big group, if one person is a vegan and one person has certain allergies, chef will dial it down. Each guest gets to dine on the exact food that they would prefer. Then the next morning, I went too fast. It's March. That evening is consumed with sitting on the deck, watching the aurora above. These past guests, so we've got people out today and people in tomorrow. They have had aurora almost every night of their stay. Like epic off the charts aurora. And then this next inbound group is going to see the same, all hinging because it's right around the spring equinox. So it's a higher probability. A fun little aside, I'll throw in some science. Where Sheldon Chalet sits, you cannot find another accommodation on the planet that is at our latitude. So we're at 63 degrees north latitude and our elevation. So we are at 5,800 feet elevation. You can go higher latitude, but you're going to be lower elevation. That does two things. One, we are inland, so you don't have the maritime climate that you might in like the Iceland or the Scandinavia countries. And because of this, our troposphere is thinner, meaning the moisture and the dust particles are absent, and the light show becomes more sparkly and brilliant. So that's a fun. So now you've just watched the aurora or the shooting stars or the starscape or the full moon. Honestly, a full moon is one of my favorite. It lights up the amphitheater, almost like the picture we're seeing today. It will be that bright. Unreal. Then you go to bed and you're maybe exhausted because you stayed up till 2 a.m. or something. Breakfast the next morning is made to order at your leisure. And chef's going to ask you, what time would you like? And what do you think? It is really your experience to make it be whatever you'd like it to be. And then we'll get you outfitted in all of the gear that comes with your stay, recognizing most people do not have the right pants, parkas, jackets, gloves, and hats. So we supply that. We supply all the adventure equipment. Now we're going to take you with our guides down to the glacier below. So if you look at my photograph there that I've got in my background, over here is the playground that we will start trekking out into. And then these slopes across the mountain slopes you see, we can get up in there. And we'll do snowshoe treks or some hybrid ski treks that we have. But before we do that, we're going to take everybody through a mini mountaineering glacier school, what it's like to be on a harness and on a rope team. And, what happens if someone falls? How do we arrest that fall? And just basic training that no prior experience is required. These are novice guests that we've had that never done anything like this before. And everybody has a great time. The ice cavern that we have, they open, they close, so it's never the same one. You get into an ice cave and an ice cavern, and it's awesome. The comment that I had from the recent guests, I'm just pulling my memory banks. They see this little tiny opening. They're like, I don't want to go in there. I'm claustrophobic. You can, and then they're like, but we did because everybody was encouraging us to go. And you get in there and it opens up and you're looking at ice and icicles and snow that's ancient. So it's quite a marvel experience. And then we do that over the next day and the next day. So it's kind of a program that repeats, but the plug and play pieces are where you get the differentiation of what you're going to do during the day. Maybe the next day it's sledding. Maybe the next day it's another ice cavern. Maybe the next day you're trekking across the amphitheater to a different vantage point with different peaks and getting on those peaks. In the summertime, ice climbing and rock climbing presents itself. Because right now you can see all the snow, there's no ice and rock visible. So it's phenomenal experience, but everything is on the snow, even in July, August, and September. The snow melts out from our rock, but it doesn't melt out from the glacier below.
Sure. So absolutely amazing. All 4 seasons, 12 months of the year, 52
Yes.
weeks of the year. There's
Yes.
something to do, and that just sounds so amazing. So can you share with us what is the most interesting thing clients have done when they've been at the chalet?
Oh, I think from their perspective, it definitely is the ice cavern. The most interesting thing, because when do people get to say, I have been inside a glacier, a moving river of frozen ice that ebbs and flows through the seasons? I mean, prior to Sheldon Chalet, I'd never been in one. And now I'm like, can we go to the caverns today when I get up there with our guides? So I would say that is by far, from guest feedback, the most interesting, intriguing, mind-blowing experience they have had. It sounds maybe elementary, but this next comment is the sledding. To be able to go on our 1/4-mile sled run down Denali on this great run. I mean, you're watching people in their middle ages feeling like a kid again. and just screaming and hooting and hollering, and we'll set up a gorgeous gourmet picnic right there as you come to the bottom and have a bite or have a drink and then keep going. I guess the other thing that's really adventuresome and intriguing, people, it's kind of trending really popular now, where it's been the way that we ski in the Alaska Range for years, but it's that backcountry or alpine touring skiing that's become very popular right now across the ski industry. And we're seeing guests start to come and want to do that. So to say that I have skied Denali, you know, that little badge of honor you get to have, that's another really incredible experience. I was out yesterday with our guests doing that. So we have the ski plane land on the glacier here, pick everybody up, fly them to a different part of Denali. You know, they've just skied this whole area. So now it's day 4 and we're going to take them to another glacier and another slope angle that they can ski. Gorgeous day. We were out all day. Chef had set up this awesome, like they could swim up glacier pool deck, dug it out of the snow and set up drinks and lunch. And it was just a grand experience. And you can't get that. Even if you're backcountry ski touring, let's say in the Rockies, that won't be your experience. One, you're not on Denali, you don't have a private chef with you.
Exactly. It just sounds, everything about it is just so amazing to me. And I'm glad you've talked about the chef a couple times, because one of the things many people may not even expect is how rich the culinary expenses are throughout Alaska. But the culinary experience at the chalet is so special, and it has to be because of the people, and those activities because of the people. So what makes them so special?
Oh, I can tell you what makes them so special is that they're Alaskan. Our chefs are local. We're not flying them in for the season because we don't have a short season like some of the other Alaskan lodges. We are year round, so it requires our staff to be local, which that then means they're knowledgeable. One of my pet peeves when I travel, and my husband and I with our boys have traveled the world, is you get to a place and you're talking to a guide or somebody and they're not local, and there goes away the richness of what I can learn about the environment, the culture, the history, the food, everything. So because they're local, they know where to get it sounds again elementary, but the best yummy potatoes that have been root cellared in January. Same with the carrots in January, fresh, Alaskan root cellared vegetables. It's like, wait, what? And then the fresh seafood. We have such an abundance and bounty of fresh seafood, and the chefs know where to source that. And they come up with the coolest meal preparations that I have ever seen. And our guests, they're savvy travelers and they've traveled extensively. And yet the main response in many, but always we hear, your chefs are amazing. Can I take them with me for my yacht or my where or my home or I'm like, no, they're here. So that is an experience in and of itself. And as we talk to staff and paint the vision for what this experience should look like for our guests, I say, you guys, look out the windows, look at the majesty of our environment, the grandeur of our setting. Everything of this experience, culinary, guiding, concierge level of detail, has to rise to this level. You can't exceed or supersede creation. It's just magnificent and glorious, but we can do our best to rise. So you're not going to show up and have, chicken nuggets that have just been pulled out of, deep fryer, because that just it would feel off. It would feel incongruous with where we are. So the meals are going to be as beautiful and gorgeous as our setting.
Well, it sounds absolutely amazing to me. Is there anything new on the horizon for Sheldon Chalet?
Well, possibly. We're just starting to sort out how to do heli skiing from the chalet. And if you go back to, I said Denali National Park does not allow helicopter skiing in their boundaries because you can't set the bird down in their parklands. So that means we have to go outside the parklands. It's viable. There's a lot of heli ski operators that are doing it right now. but the group that we have up there right this moment in time that's flying off today, they did that on Friday. So we're just starting to build that out and see how we can do that. So that'll be something new, springtime to offer. And then the other thing that we're navigating how to do it, and it's all about how do we just bring it in, and a lot of our guests are offered the opportunity to have that ski plane come back and pick them up on Glacier. That's an add-on. They're adding that on. However, more guests than not are adding that on. And so we want to figure out how do we just make that part of the package, because it is really cool to hop in that ski plane, to fly the summit of Denali at 20,000 feet. And you do have oxygen on board for the brief moment that you're that high. And then you get this cool historical flight seeing of Don Sheldon. You get to see where he's landed his plane at 14,000 feet to do a rescue. You get to see the air routes that he pioneered to put down on all these different glaciers. You'll fly over base camp and get to see. So it brings Denali further to life, because you're getting higher in the air from that bird's eye view. So those are the two things that we're just now like, how do we do this? How do we make this consistent and build out that program?
Sure. And one of the things that we haven't mentioned, but the chalet is 10 miles from the mountain. And if I am correct, and those that come to Mount McKinley and don't get any further than the park entrance, they're still like, what, 100 miles away from the mountain, 90 miles away from the mountain?
They are. The park road starts at the highway and it goes back 90 miles. And then once you're at the end of that 90 miles, the mountain is still probably 20 away from that 90 miles. So you're far. We are up close and personal. And thanks for bringing that up, Rick, because the statistic, if you go to visit Denali National Park, the chances of seeing the mountain are 30%. 30%, because it's going to be in clouds and just the way the weather works on the north side and the summit and all that. From our vantage point and where we are and the way our weather works and all that we have to offer, literally 98% of our guests have seen the summit. Wow, because you're there and you have the ability to watch the weather ebb and flow, and maybe one day it's clouded over and another day the peak reveals itself. It might only be for 20 minutes, but you've seen it, sure, because you're there for a multitude of days. So
yeah. Wow. So this is my final question of the day. I'm sure we could talk on for a lot more time, but in the respect your time, my final question is, what would you say for the person that's been listening to us today and says, that is the experience I want for my family and friends, knowing that the chalet sleeps 10 people, what would you say to them?
Let's do it. Don't hesitate. Yes, 10 guests maximum. So make sure your family and friend group doesn't exceed that. And let's go for it. You will not be disappointed. It will not be anything that you have ever experienced before. It will blow your mind. It will touch your soul in ways that you've not felt before. I'll kind of add this little tag. We had a gentleman who's a BBC show, a host. His name is Simon Reeve, and you can find this show on the BBC. He was at the chalet for one night. It just worked perfectly between all the other filming. He was doing a whole North America segment. And as he was departing that next day, I was up there with him, and he says in his great British accent, "Marnie, I have never experienced anything like this in all the world." And then he said, "There's a feeling here that I have never felt in all of my travels." Well, me being me, I kind of I'm going to push back, because you have been around the world. And I know that you've been to some amazing places and seen some amazing things. So I said, "Oh, come on, Simon, really? Straight up." And he goes, "No, I mean it, Marnie. There is a feeling that exists here in the amphitheater that touched me in a way that I've never been touched before." And I'm like, wow. So that has now been, and that was early on in our life of the Sheldon Chalet. So it's been reiterated by guests over and over again. Like I used early on, I said spiritual intoxication. That was a guest who came up with that phrase. I'm like, it's so right. It's so right. So to those people that are pondering and contemplating, do I pull the trigger to come? Don't even think about it. Just pull the trigger and come. You won't be disappointed.
And I can't disagree. My name is Rick Saltarelli, and I've been talking with Marnie Sheldon from Sheldon Chalet all the way from Talkeetna in Alaska. This is a unparalleled experience for anybody that thinks that they've traveled and done everything. This is something they have not done. It'll give you tremendous bragging rights to a tremendous journey. Any time of the year, 52 weeks of the year, Sheldon Chalet is open. I'm Rick Saltarelli. You've been listening to this week's segment of Beyond Your Front Door. If you have any more questions, please give me a call at 888-332-8202. And if you're watching this video, there will be a secondary video that will be accompanying this with some pictures of the chalet. You will not want to miss that. Thank you, Marnie, for being with me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Rick, for having me. It was my pleasure and tons of fun. Thank you.
Thank you.